Palate to Palate with Robert St. John and Wyatt Waters is made possible by a generous contribution from Sanderson Farms. Additional funding is provided by this and other public television stations and from viewers like you. Thank you.
You know, we've spent a lot of time in Tuscany, and the weather in Tuscany has, for us, has almost always been favorable. I can remember one rain day in Tuscany. Heading to Venice at the end of November, 1st of December is an entirely different story. Yeah. And we encountered some rain.
Yeah, but there weren't that many tourists there, of course, because it was an off kind. And watercolor and rain, they don't really go together well. But I like to try to make things work. I like a challenge.
This is a disaster waiting to happen.
So we get there, and I set up in the back. I wonder if we got an awning here. And I'm painting a gondola full of people in umbrellas. They're still running gondolas. They're in the water. They're avoiding the water with the umbrellas. And I get through with the painting, and I'm feeling pretty good. And then the awning, unbeknownst to me, it's very silent, it's mechanical, silently and slowly retracts, creating a Niagara Fall effect on the painting.
Water fell, cascaded on here, lightening this area. I will probably go back and restate that to what the original was, but these things happen on location.
Oh, Venice. If you want two Americans who love Italy, we're your guys.
You know, I really fell in love with Italy before I even went there, just through the paintings I studied.
Neither one of us are Italian experts. We mangle the language almost in every sentence.
But we love this place. Turning people on to the food, to the culture, to the art, and just the entire experience.
It's a great place.
We're still learning about Italy.
It's great to watch people experience this.
We went over there and we fell in love with it.
And we love sharing it with other people.
In 2011, I took my family, my wife and my two kids over and traveled all over Europe, 17 countries and 2 continents and 70-something cities. But the entire time we were in Italy, you flew over and joined us. And so for 10 weeks, you and I worked on a book called An Italian Palate.
That was an amazing thing.
It was a great experience. We covered from the southernmost tip of Sicily to the Alps.
Maybe one of the most intense times of my life artistically.
Yeah. And,
I think it is.
You finished 128 watercolors in 10 weeks. And the amazing thing about that is that out of those 70 days, only about 62 days were watercolor days. And that's a lot of work to cram into 62 days. Beautiful watercolors. And we came back and you had a show of all of those works at the Mississippi Museum of Art and then at the gallery in Hattiesburg. And we went on a book tour. And while we were on that book tour, we're just signing books and we're going around and traveling like we do when we do a book tour. And people kept talking to us and saying, they had either seen your art as you were posting it while you were over there, followed you on social media, or they had read my column from over there wherever we were. And they started saying as we're signing their books, I wish you'd take us over there. We'd love to go to Italy with you. We'd love to go to Europe with you. And at first you just think, that's somebody making conversation while you sign their book.
But it happens enough.
Yeah, and it kept happening. People kept asking. Finally, I called you up one day and I said, man, I think people want us to take them to Italy. And so
I said, yes.
Yes. And so I made one social media post and we filled up a trip and we went to Tuscany. And then we had a waiting list, and so we went to Tuscany again. And then those people that we had taken to Tuscany wanted to do something else. And we had a great time in northern Italy because of Venice, which is one of the most amazing cities on the planet. Yeah. And then Bologna, which is the food capital of Italy. And then Milan, which is magical at Christmas time. And so we ended up just being accidental tour guides, but we have had a blast doing it. And then, public broadcasting decided to do a television show, and here we are, a fat burger flipper and a hippie artist. And You know, two old dudes with a TV show. Who would have thunk it? We know Tuscany well, and we've been over there a lot. We have a lot of friends there in that area, and we've led several tours in Tuscany. Going to northern Italy was a whole different animal, and the challenges were greater.
It's a north-south country, so there's a lot of variety.
Welcome to Venice.
Thank you. Grazie. And so just really with a tour group, touring around with 25 people, a camera crew, a girlfriend and a wife, and you're dealing with Venice, and there, that's the thing, it's just transportation. And how do you get around, and how do you get this many people onto a boat and get them to this place or that place? So logistically, it was much more of a challenge.
Yeah, especially Venice.
Bushy tail, like you hadn't been flying all night. We're gonna have fun. This is it's gonna be an adventure.
My introduction to Italy was through Venice, through the works of John Singer Sargent. There's a lot of other artists that went there to paint because it's just such a fantastic place for artists to go. It really is a magical place. It's not something that I was at all disappointed about. I thought, well, maybe I'll get there and maybe it'll just be an okay, good place painted by, you know,
really
great artists. Yeah. But it was a great place, painted by great artists, so it did not disappoint.
You know, I had the same exact experience, and when we were on that original long trip, I almost, if it wouldn't have been for you, I might not have gone to Venice. But I knew you were so high on Sargent, and he was your hero. And Venice, if we were going to do a book on Italy, Venice had to be in the book.
Yeah.
And so I kind of unwittingly went. Jill, my wife, really wanted to be there, but in my head, I thought, it's going to be real touristy. I get it. It's water instead of streets, and here's the deal. And then we got to Venice. And I remember going down the Grand Canal the first night, and I remember thinking, what an idiot I was. What a magical place this is. And I would say the most unique city in the world.
I would have to agree. It's a miracle that it ever came about. It's a miracle that it still exists.
Yeah.
It's just a miracle.
Yeah. Built on wood pilings that are how old?
Yeah, well, I don't
hundreds
know,
and hundreds, if not thousands of years old.
There wasn't a place there, so they made a place.
Yeah, insert fact of Venice here. How many years the pilings have been in Venice? Right there.
Decades and decades.
Right there. Yeah.
Millions.
The pilings have been there years.
And billions of years.
The thing about traveling that time of year is, to me, it's perfect. Some people think it's too cold, and really it's not. It's about the temperature, even though their latitude is way up. It's about Connecticut or somewhere. But to us, it's the same. It's sweater weather, but there are no crowds. Mm-hmm. And when you can go to Venice and not have to deal with crowds, that's when you want to go. We're up in northern Italy this time. It's a little bit more of a challenge. The weather's a challenge. The area is a challenge. We don't have Anna Gloria and Enzo, but we have Chiara, who is helping us, and several others. So it starts in Venice.
There's nothing to compare Venice to. Venice is its own thing. Mamma mia, that was good stuff.
So whatever, adverse conditions, if it's a little chilly and maybe a little rainy, I can deal with that as long as we can. We were in St. Mark's Square, and there was nobody. I mean, we were lucky we didn't have high water while we were there, and we had the place to ourselves. Mm-hmm. And so you've got this magical city that is unlike anything on the planet. Ah, Venice. and we were there with, you know, a few hundred other people. It's just a great thing.
The really cool thing about Venice is instead of streets and cars, you have canals with boats and gondolas. When I was there the first time, I was staying with someone, and I said, it's just so serene, you know, to be here and, you know, watching these boats floating down the canals so peacefully. And he said, oh, it's not so peaceful. And he translated what happens when the boats meet at intersections. Yeah. They get just as heated as any, you know, but it's all in Italian, so it's not something that you interpret as tense. It's kind of charming.
I think what surprises most of our travelers that go with us is that there's not even a taxi at the airport. When you land at the airport, you hop on a boat. We travel light. And you're in a boat, unless you're walking over bridges. And what Venice is really a series of islands connected by bridges. And if you either walk somewhere or you go on a boat, period. And you don't have any other choice. But that's what makes it so special.
It is the most walkable city. That is the transportation, that and boats.
It's a city of 400 bridges and over 118 islands connected by those 400 bridges. There's nothing like that anywhere.
It's a cool place. The first thing I wanted to do was paint a gondola. That's the first thing that I thought about. And they've been operating for 900 years, and there are 400 gondolas in Venice right now. Women have only recently been gondoliers. But I started working on that painting, and you know, it's a really strange thing. There's this boat that's floating in the water, and it's coming down dogs and frogs. It's raining. I'm under an awning, so I'm okay. And these people are holding these umbrellas because they want to go ride on the gondola, even if it's raining. So that just seemed kind of humorous to me. That's what drew me to do that painting.
If you think about 900 years of tradition in history, and I mean, our country is a little over 200 years old or whatever, it's 4 times that and more that they've been riding around in these gondolas over there. And that's the thing about Italy is their history that as Americans we go over, and it's one of those things that everybody connects to because of just hundreds of years.
You associate it with this. It's the thing that you most associate with Venice, I would say. They're not symmetrical boats, too. They're kind of curved to the side so the pilot can, you know, pole it around in the water. And in fact, a lot of the paintings that I did, in studying the paintings, I've never read this, but I noticed this just looking at it. You could see the front of the boat in the painting. And I just surmised he did paintings from the boats. He would hire a gondolier and he would do the painting from the boat. So many of the things he did paint were done from gondolas.
So you're talking about Sargent was in the boat?
He was in the boat.
While he was painting another boat?
Yes, he was in the water. He wasn't just, the boat became a part of the painting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And the umbrellas did turn out to be the star of the show, didn't
Yes,
they?
they did. I like that.
Who would have thunk it?
I think I'm done. It's such an otherworldly place, Venice is, that artists are naturally drawn there. Monet painted there, so many painters painted there. And that was really how I knew what Venice was about.
You know, when we travel with our groups, a lot of that is planned, and 2 or 3 months out, you and I are making plans and working the schedule, because when you're over there, we're moving fast and we cram a lot in and a lot of time. But we leave a little space here and there to kind of keep it open and keep it fluid and let kind of organic things happen. And at this time, at that hotel, the Hotel Monaco, which was right on the Grand Canal,
beautiful
was a
location.
great, beautiful old hotel. I walked upstairs and just saw this gorgeous ballroom, and I thought, here we are in Venice, the most romantic city. There's this gorgeous ballroom. John Singer Sargent did his best work there, and I knew the connection with you and Sargent, and I thought, you know what? We need to take 30 minutes, take all our people up to this room, let's sit here and let Wyatt tell everybody about why Sargent matters.
My view of what this place is flavored with the ghost of Sargent and Whistler and Monet and all the guys who came here to find this as an art place.
He was the perfect person for this trip to me, because he was an American, but he was an expatriate. He never denied his citizenship, but he spent quite a bit of time abroad. And the time that he spent abroad, the best of that time was spent in Italy, and the best of the Italian time, again, was spent in Venice.
But he did great work, and the portraits that he did sometimes would leave him probably wanting for expression. So what he did, I believe, is he would work in watercolor, and that's how kind of he got his art fix and his expressive fixes in. Watercolor, you put it down, it drips, it runs. You don't keep it from running, you don't keep it from dripping. You figure out how to use that, and you have to get into a rhythm of movement with it. And so it's very much like dancing.
We've done a lot of speeches and a lot of demos and a lot of things in a lot of really nice places. Never have we been in a room that grand where one of us, in this occasion it was you, was able to address a group in such a manner. That was a very special little 30-minute period, and it just happened organically, just like that. It was a fun moment.
It looked like he could have had someone from aristocracy posing for him in that very room. It was that opulent. It was just fantastic.
So of all the iconic structures in Venice, you've got St. Mark's, you've got the Tower, Doge's Palace. The Rialto Bridge would be in the top 4 or 5.
Yes.
Originally there was a wooden bridge there, and on the day of a wedding, all the wedding party was on the wooden bridge, and too many people there, it collapsed into the Grand Canal, and so they built the Rialto Bridge, which is the new bridge, which was built in 1591, and that's how new the new bridge is. But a lot of times when we're in Italy, and you see a lot of weddings all the time, and people are getting photographs, and I think one of the most popular places is right there in St. Mark's Square. With the exception of watercolor, I am most impressed with mosaics. There's something about the art of putting little tiles together to make something that beautiful. Not to discount any watercolor, obviously, which is my favorite medium. But mosaics would be my second. There's something about the craftsmanship in that.
Let's say people come here for getting married in this romantic and unique city.
The Doge's Palace is the official residence of the ruler of Venice, and the interesting detail there are these lion heads with the mouth and the opening and the thing. And back in the day, if you wanted to kind of tell the leader your neighbor was acting up or doing this or that, you wrote it down on a sheet and you just stuck it in there.
Wow. And
it was kind of the original ratting on your neighbor thing there.
The opposite of the Wailing Wall. The Bridge of Sighs, and they said, I said, you Americans, you say Bridge of Sighs, like, and it's like, off of their heads kind of
They're on their
thing.
way to prison. And so they got judged over there, and then they got marched over to the prison here, over the canal.
So it's like a bridge. You say bridge of sighs, but it's really bridge of groans, because they go, ooh. So it's really the bridge of groans. It doesn't sound so good. Bridge of sighs is much better.
You know, our trips, when we take groups with us, are all about art, culture, and food. The thing about Venice is unless you're really eating on that upper high level, it is such a huge tourist town. You gotta really look hard to find good, because what we like, what you and I like when we go eat in Italy, we like to keep it simple. We like to go where the locals eat.
Authentic.
Yeah, and authentic. We want to eat what the Venetians are eating every day, or we want to eat what the Tuscans are eating every day. And that's not so easy to find in Venice. You don't go to Venice for the food. You go to Venice because it's Venice, and it's this world-class city.
You can't go wrong in Italy, though. Italy has so many beautiful facets to it. You can make there's a painting here, there's a painting here, and there's a painting here.
Yeah.
You know, every place is a good painting.
It was a little bit of a challenge because the weather wasn't the best weather in the world. And, you know, we had a good bit of rain and a lot of clouds.
Nature
but
travel.
then one day, the clouds broke and the sun came out.
And I got a painting. I was painting St. Mark's, and the sun came out, and there was the palace in the background, and just this vast square piazza in front of you. It made the whole painting. The great light. It's true, Venetian light. It's like facets in a jewel. The light hits a wall, bounces on this wall, bounces on that wall. I really think that has a lot to do with it. Also, the fact that the materials in Italy, in Venice, are so old, and so they're very neutral.
A lot of natural stone.
And the bounce
and
of the light.
Marble,
And water also with that, bouncing of light off of the water. That's to me, that's what makes Venetian light what it is.
I'm gonna do some stuff that most people consider to be watercolor type stuff right now. If you take it too far beyond there, there's the point of no return. But I like looking, nonetheless. I just love looking at things, and I think at the core of someone who paints is just this curiosity to see, to understand. And that's just a suggestion of how to paint. Suggestion is very important.
Yeah, people experience that, I think, unlike they experience any other city. And like I did the first time I went, I was a little cynical about it because I thought it was just going to be a big tourist trap. And there are a lot of tourists there. Not when we go. We go with a slower time of year, and it's much better.
It's a much better time,
But there's a reason so many tourists go there. And that's because it is a beautiful, magical place. In the Grand Canal at night, there is nothing like it. One of the main things I wanted to do with our group when we got to Venice, because I had had such a great first experience on the Grand Canal at night, I wanted to take them on the Grand Canal at night. But I also wanted them to get the history of the buildings, and this was there, and that was there, and this museum.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Okay.
This brilliant idea, I thought. We get the tour guide on one, and it wouldn't matter where the gondolas are here and there.
Yeah, you can just communicate that way.
You know what they say about best laid plans?
Well, It was a good idea.
So it didn't work, man. And I don't know what it was, but all you heard when the tour guide was talking was, you heard nothing.
Breaker 19.
I don't know why they are not working.
And on top of that, I think we almost had a collision with two boats.
We could own this boat.
Even with that, even with all of that drama,
It was still grand.
It was still grand, and it was still beautiful, and it was a memorable night.
Yeah.
And it was a night, I think a lot of people won't forget.
Nothing went wrong. Everything was wonderful. This is the magic of television. Everything was great.
The paintings seen on today's program, plus many others, are featured in An Italian Palate cookbook. This beautiful volume also includes authentic Italian recipes. An Italian Palate cookbook. Palate to Palate with Robert St. John and Wyatt Waters is made possible by a generous contribution from Sanderson Farms. Additional funding is provided by this and other public television stations and from viewers like you. Thank you.